They built pyramids, wrote in symbols, and mummified their dead. But have you ever wondered what the ancient Egyptians actually sounded like? Not the dramatic Hollywood accents or the quiet museum whispers, but the real voices echoing through the Nile Valley 3,000 years ago. It turns out, we may be closer than ever to hearing them speak. But the path to rediscovering their lost tongue? It's twisted, controversial, and buried in forgotten tombs. It begins not with a voice, but a silence. For centuries, the ancient Egyptian language was locked behind a wall of hieroglyphs no one could read aloud. Scholars knew what the symbols meant, but not how they sounded. The language had been dead for so long, its pronunciation was lost, like a corpse without a name. And yet, some dared to believe that the language of pharaohs could rise again. But here's the twist. The ancient Egyptian language never fully died. It transformed. Just as Latin evolved into Italian and French, Egyptian mutated into Coptic, a strange Christian dialect spoken by a persecuted minority today. Linguists realized that Coptic might hold the final echoes of pharaohs and priests, if they dared to listen closely enough. Coptic became the unlikely Rosetta Stone of sound. While most people focused on what ancient Egyptian meant, these linguistic detectives began asking how it sounded. Could the voices of mummified priests and boy kings be buried in the songs of Coptic monks? The idea was dismissed by many, but a few wouldn't let go, and they uncovered more than anyone expected. But to truly crack the code, scholars needed something else, a time machine. And they got one, in the form of a multilingual slab of stone dug up in 1799 by Napoleon's troops. The Rosetta Stone had Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic inscriptions of the same text. It let people read ancient Egyptian again. But now, they wanted to hear it. With the Rosetta Stone decoded by Jean-François Champollion, scholars could begin to pronounce words, not just guess at their meaning. Champollion's work revealed grammar, sentence structures, and word roots. But there was still a catch. Hieroglyphs don't write vowels. Imagine trying to pronounce English using only HT for hat, hit, or hot. A single wrong vowel could mangle everything. This is where it gets wild. Scholars turned to Egyptian transcriptions in foreign languages. Greek historians like Herodotus wrote Egyptian names phonetically in their alphabets. Suddenly, RAMSES wasn't just an engraving, it had sound. By comparing foreign spellings with Egyptian symbols, researchers began reconstructing how names, gods, and cities were spoken. But even this wasn't enough. Enter Egyptian Arabic. Though introduced after the Arab conquest in the 7th century AD, some modern Egyptian Arabic words show eerie similarities to ancient Egyptian roots. The word for sun, for example, shams in Arabic, may still echo the ancient RA. Could modern Cairo dialects carry the genetic residue of a dead language? Not everyone agrees. Some scholars warn against over-romanticizing the continuity of Egyptian speech. Languages change rapidly. Assuming that modern tongues preserve 3,000-year-old sounds can be like assuming your grandma's lullabies are identical to those sung in the Ice Age. And yet, the coincidences pile up. Then there's the anatomical resurrection. In 2020, scientists 3D printed the vocal tract of an Egyptian priest named Nasiaman, who died over 3,000 years ago. They recreated the shape of his throat from CT scans of his mummified body. Using this model, they produced a single eerie vowel sound. It was a synthetic whisper from the dead, raw, incomplete, but chillingly real. People were divided. Was this science or spectacle? Critics called it a Frankenstein gimmick. But defenders argued it was a starting point, evidence that technology might resurrect more than just bones. If we could model vocal tracts and combine that with linguistic data, we might one day hear full sentences in a pharaoh's voice. Reconstruction efforts took another leap with experimental linguistics. Scholars began using knowledge of Afroasiatic languages, such as Hebrew and Berber, to triangulate ancient Egyptian pronunciation. Patterns emerged. Sound shifts became predictable. What had once seemed arbitrary gibberish became decipherable phonetics. Ancient Egyptian wasn't a code anymore, it was a language. Let's pause here and say it aloud. Ankh. It means life. You've seen it in hieroglyphs, like a looped cross. But how was it pronounced? Most scholars agree it was probably something like Ain K with a nasal K. Not perfect, but for the first time in centuries, we can speak the language of gods and tomb builders with some confidence. But pronunciation isn't just about sounds. It's about rhythm, emotion, cultural nuance. Modern-day Egyptologists now collaborate with musicians and voice actors to breathe life into reconstructed phrases. They perform ancient hymns in reconstructed accents, using reconstructed instruments. It's not just a voice, it's a vibe. Yet, there's a dark undercurrent. Some native Egyptian Copts feel that the West is exploiting their sacred language, treating it like a linguistic sandbox. They argue that Coptic isn't just a tool to unlock ancient secrets. It's a living faith, recited in daily prayers. To them, it's not an artifact. It's identity. The debate gets even more political when Egyptologists from Europe or the US claim authority over pronunciation. Who gets to own the voice of Egypt? Is it the scholars in Oxford? The priests in Cairo? The AI researchers in California? Or the descendants of the people who lived and worshipped along the Nile for millennia? Language isn't neutral, it's power. The way we pronounce the names of gods and kings reveals what we value. Say Tutankhamun, wrong, and you erase his meaning. Say Ra, like Ray, and the sun god flickers out. Sound carries memory. It's sacred, and we're just beginning to recover it. So what does ancient Egyptian actually sound like? Imagine a deep, rhythmic tongue, throaty but lyrical. A blend of clicks, glottal stops, and breathy vowels. Foreign to our ears, yet strangely familiar. Like something just at the edge of memory. A language that once filled temples and marketplaces, now a ghost we're coaxing back to life. And we're closer than ever. With AI speech synthesis, linguists are now generating reconstructed Egyptian voices reading known texts. These aren't guesses anymore. They're models based on grammar, phonetics, anatomy, and context. We're not just reading history, we're hearing it. Soon, you may be able to walk through a VR temple of Karnak and hear the priests chant in reconstructed Egyptian. You might greet a virtual pharaoh, not with subtitles, but with his actual voice. History, for the first time, could speak. But the question remains, will we listen? Not just to the sounds, but to what they mean? To what was lost, stolen, reinvented? Will we hear the voices of slaves, scribes, midwives, and children, or only the golden ones of kings? Because if we only resurrect the voices of the powerful, then we are not hearing Egypt. We are just echoing its elite. True resurrection means recovering the whispers, the laughter, the lullabies, the forgotten music of daily life. And that is still a mystery. So the next time you see a hieroglyph, try to say it out loud. Don't worry if it's imperfect. The dead aren't judging. They might even be smiling. Because every time you speak their words, their language breathes again. And in that breath, they live.